I see so many of you on the parsonage porch, and you are all welcome. And Paul and Gary are going to be putting up plastic curtains today, which can roll up and allow the breeze so we can still be COVID safe and offer more coziness. Thank you, Paul and Gary, for all you do to keep us safe and well. This past week, I learned more about grief from all of you who visited, how we hold it, shape it, and how we put it down too. There is so much to grieve these days: missed family, loneliness, the changed shape of our work, the loss of connection, the evaporated markers in a day, and the lost meaning that comes with all of it too. How do we make room to grieve all of this while leaving space for hope and sustaining the courage to greet each day with enough wonder to keep us all going? Welcome to this Sunday, where we wrestle with these questions while offering the balm of love, witness, committed community, and bright porches. Welcome. It is my honor today to welcome Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor. Dr. O'Connor earned a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Arizona. She is a professor at the University of Arizona in the Department of Psychology. Dr. O'Connor her work has primarily focused on bereavement. She believes that a clinical science approach to the experience and psychology of grief can offer healing. She has authored research papers that have been published in a wide range of peer-reviewed journals, from the American Journal of Psychiatry to biochemistry to death studies. Dr. O'Connor's work has been discussed in Newsweek, The Washington Post, and Psychology Today, and she has so generously agreed to join us. Welcome, Dr. O'Connor. Please unmute yourself and say a few words.
It's just so delightful to be a part of this community. Just getting to experience you all greeting each other is a gift.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm already tearing up just imagining what you're going to be talking about today. I'm preparing. Thank you so much for being here. And we have a few announcements today. Kat, why don't you start, my dear?
Okay, so bear with me. I have a number of things to report on and announce. First of all, I'm so excited that our December holiday sale, which has been online for just a few days, has been so successful so far. We've sold over $1,500 worth of items so far, and thank you all for people who have purchased things. It's not too late. There are still some things up, and we are actually still adding a few items. So the sale will be going on this week, and I see Sue has put the website for the sale in the chat there. It's going to be going all this week until Friday at 8 p.m. We had our first pickup day at the activities room yesterday, and we'll have another pickup day next Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m. And if you are not able to make it, you can email, probably Allison Forsgren would be the best person to email to make arrangements, and we can have somebody drop off your items if you paid for them. So yeah, so keep checking the site, and thank you so much to all the people who made items. We have a very talented group that's been meeting every Saturday morning all year long. So thank you again for that. The next announcement and reminder is in my capacity as the acting treasurer. We've had a lot of people send in their pledges for 2021 so far. And thank you. We're well over halfway to our goal now, but if you haven't sent in your pledge, please do so as soon as possible. We're working on finalizing the budget for next fiscal year, and it's really important to know how much money we have to spend. So thank you for that. And then finally, in my capacity as a member of the Lay-Led Service Committee, our December service on, I think it's December 27th, is going to be about holiday traditions. And what we're going to do is have a few people who have unique or interesting family holiday traditions. We'd love to have you, if you're willing to talk about that for 3 minutes, no more than 5 minutes. We'd love to have you share that. And we're also looking for people to send in photos, their family holiday photos, for a slideshow that we're going to do. So Elizabeth Sorrows is collecting the photos, and I think she's gonna we'll put an announcement in the newsletter, but I just wanted to ask you to start thinking about if you have an interesting or unique holiday tradition and you'd like to share that. Please get in touch with me or Susan Richards, and photos to Elizabeth at her, I don't know, it's the tech Zoom. You might know what this is, the
Put it in the chat.
Zoom tech
Put it in the
email
chat.
address. So I'm really looking forward to that service. It should be a lot of fun. So thank you.
So much, Kat, and all your many hats and roles. I call her Reverend Kat. We have Father Paul and Reverend Kat. Thank you so much. It takes a village, does it not? And you are all blessed people. So grateful to be here with you. So let us now light the chalice, and then we will light the menorah right after with Joy and Greg.
Lydia's raising her hand.
Lydia, do you think we could save you for joys and concerns, my dear?
Yes, I was asked to add something from Allison, just that she's updating the site tonight.
Okay, thank you, Lydia.
Amazing gifts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lydia, for adding that. All right, so the words to the chalice, I'll just say them if you don't have it. It's with this flame, we renew our commitment to justice, peace, and compassion. Go ahead and unmute yourselves and join Gary.
With this flame,
renew our commitment to
Justice, peace, and compassion.
And Joy and Craig, we are so honored to have you today with us, celebrating Hanukkah and lighting the blessed menorah. And Gary will be lighting our UU meeting house menorah at the same time. Hold 1 minute. I'm just going to mute everyone, Greg, so that we can hear you. Just 1 sec. And then you will have to unmute yourself again. I'm sorry, Greg. One last time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So well, thanks so much for having me. It's so great to be here and to see all of you, especially in the little intro before we got started, to say hi. And if we missed you, hi, we miss you. I guarantee you we miss you. We can't wait until we all get to hang out together again. Joy's returning with my children who get to say, come, enjoy.
Hello, Max and Zella. Hello.
So we're happy to be here with everybody and sharing our tradition, as you've let us do now for quite a long time. So as is the tradition, I usually give a quick abridged story of Hanukkah and talk about our candles, and then we're gonna light the lights. I'm just gonna do 1 minute. Are you guys in the middle of something? No. No? Perfect. So for those of you who don't know, Hanukkah, the Festival of Light, is a wonderful holiday that happens every year around Christmas time, which is one of the reasons it's gained so much popularity in the tradition. Sorry, Max. But Hanukkah celebrates the revolt of who led the revolt?
Maccabees.
The Maccabean revolt of 200 BC, or around 200 in the 2nd century before BCE. The Jews, who were being led by the Greeks and Syrians, who were not allowed to worship as they pleased, revolted against the Greeks and Syrians. A small group led by which Maccabee? Judah the Maccabee, the lion of Judah, and he led this revolt. Guerrilla warfare, small group, revolted and won, and took back the temple. As the Syrians and Greeks retreating from the temple, they destroyed it. So when the Jews got back to their sacked temple, they went to get everything started again. So the first thing that they wanted to do, the first thing that every synagogue would do if they were building a new one, would be to light their ner tamid, which is a Hebrew word for eternal light. And when they went to light the ner tamid, they found, lo and behold, they only had enough oil for the candle, for the lantern to burn for one day. But they lit it because that's what they had to do. And for 8 days, the time it took them to refine more oil to burn, the candle burned, the light burned for 8 days, and that was the miracle of Hanukkah. So for that reason, we celebrate the Festival of Light. We celebrate over 8 days, and we use a unique religious artifact, the Hanukkot, or the Hanukkah menorah. It has 8 lower candles and 1 higher one, 8 to represent each night, and the one is the shamus. It's a working candle. So we're going to light the lights. We're going to do the prayers. Tonight, if you're not familiar, is the 4th night of Hanukkah. So usually we'd only be lighting 4 candles. But since this is the only time I get to share my tradition with you of Hanukkah, I love to light the full menorah because I think there's nothing quite as beautiful as a full menorah burning. We're going to do the prayers. I'll do them in Hebrew, maybe with the help of my children. And then I'll do the translation as well. The first prayer will be the prayer for the lights that we do every Friday night when we light the lights. Zali, you want to light the middle?
The Shamish.
The shamus, the working candle. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who performed wondrous deeds for our... Whoa, that's the wrong translation. There it is. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who follows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the Hanukkah lights. Let's go ahead, Max. You want to light the other ones? Max, you can light 4, then let your sister light 4. Just getting that, crack it out. There you go. The next prayer for Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavotzeinu, v'matenu ha'hem hazman hazeh. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who performed wondrous deeds for our ancestors in the days of old at this season. And there's a third prayer that we only usually do on the first night of Hanukkah, because it's the prayer for new and wondrous things. That being said, it's also a prayer that we do whenever you have a unique situation. So as it's become our tradition here, when I share my candle lighting with you, we like to do the one additional prayer, which is the Shekianu. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shekianu, v'kiyamani, v'higianu, v'azman hazeh. Blessed art thou, the Lord our God, King of the universe, who, what did you do? He just wrought miracles for our fathers in days of old and allowed us to reach this joyous season. So, thanks. Great to see you guys. Thanks for letting us share this. Always a pleasure. We love you all, and we can't wait to really see each other and really commune with each other in person someday soon. We love you.
Love you. Thank you so much, not only for this tradition, but for reminding us that faith multiplies all goodness. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for being part of us. We miss you, heart and soul. Take good care of each other. Nigel, my dear, we are up to you.
Right. It's time for the singing of our affirmation as printed in the order of service. And you can all unmute yourselves and join in. We sing together for this one despite the Zoom lag. So it's noisy and hard to follow, but we try to do it the best we can anyways.
Will be the let faith and hope will arise. I have been and the
Oops, I just muted you all again. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It is the time when we greet one another and take a moment to say hello. But before we do, we ask if you are new today and would like to introduce yourselves to us so that we can greet you in our beautiful UU open-hearted way. Please, we'd love to hear from you. Just unmute yourself, or if that seems tricky, just raise your hand and we'll do our best to get to you. Anyone today? Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley. Thank you to Jane for bringing me here. Who am I? I am an actor, a children's writer of books. I'm a compassionate, kind person, a little stubborn sometimes. Going through a lot of things with the pandemic, but mostly seeing the glass half full, because that's what brings us to the other side, right? What else? Jane wanted me to mention I have a sister in Nantucket who they've lived there for 35 years, I think, and are very solid in the community, doing great things. I have a huge family. I moved here from California. My whole family.
Tell them you're on Cape Cod with me.
Oh, I'm on Cape Cod with Jane. Yes, I'm in Chatham. Yeah, I keep forgetting everyone's could be anywhere. Anything else? Should I say anything?
That's we will come to learn more about you, I hope, Ashley, as you continue to join us. You'll have all kinds of opportunities to, and we have breakout rooms too at the end of our service every week. So that's a really sweet way to make closer connections too. So hope so much to see you again. Thank you for your compassion on this earth. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Anyone else today? Remember, though, you see yourself as right beside my screen. You're really not. You're all over the place. So if you raise your hand and I miss you, please don't be offended. All right. Why don't you all unmute yourselves now and say hello?
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Amy.
Happy sunshine.
Liam,
Hello.
the cooking night was awesome.
Was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Philosopher, cooker, life coach.
Yeah.
Look delicious.
We ate like kings last night.
I bet you did.
Any leftovers?
What did you cook?
All right, my dears. We are up to you, Nigel. Whoops, hold on. Just okay.
Yep, it's time for our first hymn this morning. I'll remind everybody that for the hymns, we do stay muted. And these are recorded by myself and the choir during the week. And if you'd like to participate in the hymn recording process, it's not hard. You just have to, I make the instrumentals and then I send them out to the choir during the week, and they all sing and send it back to me, and I mix them together, and we get this beautiful sound to remind us of our musical heritage here. So the first hymn is number 8, Mother Spirit, Father Spirit.
Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest
And we have Linda and Craig now who will be reading a poem to us.
Titled, Perhaps the World Ends Here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on.
We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women.
At this table, we gossip, recall enemies, and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table.
This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory.
We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks.
Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
Oh, nice. Thank you so much. So beautifully given. Thank you so much. I invite you now to take a breath and join me for a moment of meditation. Just put down what distracts you. Let go of your lists. Let go of your busy mind for just a moment and let the grace of a breath and these sweet words enter you and offer you healing and nurturing. Let's turn inward now toward a time of prayer and reflection, even as nature turns inward, toward its time of retreat from bud and bloom, toward its time of rest and hibernation. Gently let your eyes close and your breath soften, and let your thoughts settle like the frost on the leaf's edge at dawn. Dear bringer of light and darkness, we pray for goodness and hope to fill our hearts, to fill us up so full that we pour ourselves out into the world and can't help but give to those around us. Dear bringer of mercy and forgiveness, we pray for peace. Help us know the way toward peace in our own hearts and souls. Help us when we forget the way, when we are lost in anger and fear and cannot see. Help us remember the way back home, where the truth of who we are lives. Dear bringer of joy, we pray for laughter to fill our lungs and spill into our chests when our eyes would be cast down. Remind us of the joy that is life. Remind us of the gift that is this very life, this very moment, this breath, and this breath too. Remind us of the sacred gift that we share and fill our lungs with laughter. And finally, dear bringer of life, remind us that without each other, beauty evaporates like the frost on a sunny morning. Bring us again and again into the sweet company of each other to mourn, to rejoice, and to celebrate the goodness of this, our beloved community, of this, our sacred belonging. Amen. This is now time for our joys and concerns. We ask today as grief enters our hearts with news impossible to bear at an impossible time of too much to bear, We ask for the grace of this community to surround us, to remember and remind us that we are here for one another, to lean into this fabric of love and compassion, to breathe through this together while celebrating the great joys and promises and hope that are part of every day as well. Amen.
And it's time for our middle hymn. This is number 1010. We give thanks. We'll sing it 3 times. First time is the high voices. Second time is the low voices. And the third time is all together. We give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. We give thanks for this precious day.
And dear Mary Frances, we are more than ready to receive your wisdom, my dear. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to share this time with your community. And such a lovely community it is. I'm so struck by the vibrancy of your connections in this Zoom world. COVID has brought us so many losses, and they are losses from the very big to the very, very small. They're losses of people that we love who went too soon because of this virus. They're losses of getting to sing together. They're losses of getting to pick out my fresh vegetables by touching them all and picking them all up and smelling them and nobody worrying about that at the grocery store. And so if grief feels like so many different losses, grief is this natural human reaction that we have when we experience that there's a loss. What is it exactly that we've lost? If there's this huge range of things that we call loss, then what is it? And in my 20 years of working at this, I've spent a lot of time wondering, what is this grief? Being a scientist is a little like saying, why, as a small child does over and over and over again. When I come to an answer now, I think that the answer is loss of something that helps us to navigate the world, that is a part of us, and it is how we can navigate the world because we have this other piece with us. And so in the most sort of traditional sense, we think, how can I possibly navigate the world without my husband who I've lost, or my mother who I've lost? How can I even make sense of the world without this person who is a part of how I face the world? And so in smaller losses, we see this as well. How do I even begin to connect with my students when I can't talk to them after class? I can't see them in the hallway. We only have these moments on Zoom. How do I even understand teaching when that's not possible? And so this natural response that we have to loss is grief. And of course, that creates lots of different feelings. Grief is sometimes just the pure feeling of bereftness, just this overwhelming awareness of that absence. But sometimes it's incredible anger. It's, how could this be taken away from me? This is so unfair. This so should never have happened. And other times it's terror. It's, I can't go on without my co-parent in the world, or the North Star of my best friend that has led me through so many years of my life. So grief is lots of different feelings and reactions, all in response to a loss. And I have a news flash for you. Turns out grief doesn't go away. Grief is this natural human experience. That's not actually ever going to end. We wouldn't maybe even want us to not be able to feel grief anymore for something so precious that is gone. So we will continue to feel grief in a year, in 10 years, in 40 years. There will be moments where the experience of having had this time where we had to withdraw into our homes, where we had to, avoid the meeting house or the grocery store, those moments of grief will still roll over us, and we will still remember them. We will still feel them. But that is not a very optimistic description to say that grief never ends. And so I like to make this distinction for people, which is that while grief never ends, grieving changes over time. So that although we may have these same feelings days and weeks and months later, where we feel overwhelmed by the wave of grief, the experience changes over time. Our understanding of having that feeling changes over time. Grieving is a type of learning. We learn the familiarity. Oh, I know this. This is grief. I have been here before. Or this is grief, and my mother told me what this would be like. And I recognize now I understand her in a way that I couldn't have understood before. Grieving is a type of learning then that happens over time. But then, of course, as the small child does, I say, but what? Wait, what do you learn? What's learning? And although there is the aspect of grief that is experiencing that loss, feeling those myriad emotions, and sometimes even just numbness or confusion, grief is also about restoring a meaningful life. It's the awareness of the absence that stays with us, and it is how do we restore a meaningful life for us. And that requires us to be in the present. we can't restore a meaningful life in the past. We have to live with now, with an awareness of what is lost, with a recognition of that absence, and also, what does it mean to live now without this aspect that we navigated the world with before? And I'll give you an example. My mother died. I wasn't really sure how my father would restore his life. I was a bit mystified. I thought maybe he will find a new companion. That was possible, maybe in my own mind. But my father really stayed in what was true for him in the moment. In a very literal sense, he restored our house. He painted the whole house inside. And I was mystified by this. My father had never raised an opinion on any wall color ever, to the best of my knowledge. And suddenly, the inside of our house, instead of having all white walls that my mother had preferred, was walls of many colors in every room. And I grew to know him in a different way. I didn't know that he preferred color on his walls. But he also took to the other widowers in my very small hometown. He began to invite them over for dinner on Sundays, and he became known for his sort of endless mashed potatoes that would continually appear at the table. Because I think he could connect with these other men who also felt lost, who also were uncertain how to navigate the world. And though he didn't necessarily feel like he knew how to navigate the world, he figured maybe it would be better to at least do it together. And they couldn't cook and he could. And so he offered that to them. And through that, he developed this beautiful group of friendships by staying in the moment and not ignoring the fact that he was without his wife of so many years. And I think this is what COVID asks us to do. It asks us, as it gives us these griefs, these losses, what is important? What is meaningful to you? I see people navigating this every day, from the small to the large, from the large to the small, and vice versa. I teach my classes at the university now completely online. It means we have less time together in some way, and the students get very exhausted by being constantly on Zoom all day long. It's a very different format. And I think to myself, okay, from this class that I've taught many times before, what is the one or two things that's important? What do they need to leave this class knowing? Let's focus on that. The rest is cream on the top. If we get to it, that's terrific. But let's focus on what's important, what we have the room to convey in this class time together. I see it in what is important. My sister's girlfriend's mother sent me Christmas cookies through the mail, completely unexpected. I've never even met this woman. And in her loneliness, she found new places to reach out to offer cookies to someone she only knew of, as her way to say to the world, this is what's important to me. What is important to me at Christmas is to give cookies. And if I can't do it because I have these losses, I will find another way. And I'm even struck by the story of the Jews who went back to their temple. Imagine how they felt in that moment. Everything was different for them. Everything had been lost. The temple was sacked, as we heard it described earlier. And so they did the one thing that was important to them. The one thing that they maintained through the course of all these experiences, they lit a candle. That for them was the important piece to carry forward, to show their children, to say the prayer and teach them the words. And that sustained them. I'm not saying that we would want to learn lessons about life by being faced with great losses. I'm not saying that if I had a choice, that I would choose a pandemic, given that it is here, it does force us to think about what's important and to enact restoring a meaningful life. My day is much less busy. And now when I sit down to eat dinner, I have time to think, here I am, hungry, with food in front of me that I know is going to fill me up. And I have a moment somehow to enjoy knowing that that hungry is going to be fulfilled by this nutritious food. That is not a moment I had time before to really savor, to even notice. Grief teaches us unexpected things if we can stay present and listen to it. And sometimes I say that when I meet with people now on Zoom, usually, or outside in a distanced way. It's not just how are you, but what are you learning? What is this teaching you, this difficult time? What has turned out to be important to you after all? Many of my friends have children in school, and they worry, are my children learning enough this year? What will we do about the fact that they don't see their friends? How do we manage that? These are the important questions for them that they are wrestling with. And they tell me how they've come to understand what their children need and how to fulfill that in very different ways than just sending them off to school. I think also it helps us to think about flexibility. Grief rolls over us like a wave, and then it also recedes like the tide. One of the things we learn, I think, about grief is that it doesn't stay, that it is with us throughout time, but that it comes and goes. And it asks us to be flexible. It asks us to engage a new skill of being in grief and then setting it down. Setting it down so we can do other important, meaningful things, knowing that it can be picked up again and probably will. But that flexibility, it reminds me of when you see a child on the playground and they fall down and scrape their knee and it's so painful and that little tiny knee is bleeding. And sometimes the right answer is to run over and scoop them up and find the Band-Aid in your purse and kiss them all over and tell them they'll be all right. And other times the right answer is to smile at them and say, I saw that. You can get up. It's okay. Keep going. Try again. That flexibility of how we respond to each other, I think, is a real lesson that we carry when we've had the experience of grief, of being cared for while we're grieving. Being present then with what is happening now in our life, what it means to be separated from other people, to have more time alone, to walk in nature in a way that maybe you didn't before, and hear birds in your neighborhood that you would never have noticed because you were at work all day. To be present in these moments while also being filled with the absence of the things we held dear, allowing that absence to be present with us as we are in this moment, reflecting on it, admiring it, being grateful for it, taking strength from it. As we saw in the quote that your dear Linda gave us, if there ever comes a day we can't be together, keep me in your heart. Winnie the Pooh knows that they will be there forever. That absence is not because they're gone. It's that absence stays present with us. And how do we restore a meaningful life with that absence as a part of it? Thank you for spending this time with me and listening to some of the thoughts that I've had. And I look forward to speaking with you later if you'd like.
Oh, goodness, what a blessing you are. Please join us for a moment of silence so that we can take in this extraordinary blessing. You taught me so much today, Mary Frances. What a gift to have found you so randomly and for you to have replied so openly. You are such a gift. And we are going to welcome Nancy Adrian in as a new member now. And I'm reflecting on some of the things you said about knowing that we can feed ourselves, recognizing that we're hungry and that we can feed ourselves, deciding what matters and how we will fill our time and with whom and in which ways. And of course, our new membership ceremony is part of that for me and for us. This hunger to be in community, to be in sacred community together, to be in a community that allows us to create meanings and find our way and to stumble and to be lost and to let that be all right too, and to have the arms and the openness and the flexibility to witness each other in ways that we are learning to witness each other in new ways and in old ways. This is a sacred ritual for us, bringing in new members. Of course, we love everyone who joins us, member or not. I say it's the difference between dating and marriage, but it is a time to deepen one's commitment to this community, to deepen not only one's willingness to be held, but one's willingness to hold. So I did write that Unitarian Universalist requires courage, because the night is wide and dark, and the cloak we weave in committed community does not promise us resurrection. This cloak promises that if we offer ourselves fully enough to this world and to each other, we'll learn how to use this cloak we cling to cover others' shoulders that face darker nights. This faith asks us to do the painstaking, vulnerable, heart-wrenching, and beautiful work of increasing the measure of love and justice in this world by committing ourselves to remaining even when it hurts, by leaning in when we want to turn away, by showing up when we want to hide, by loving when we want to close our hearts. The gift of our faith is this: you will always be accompanied on this human journey and learn to read and to craft the signs on the path that leads you with many others that are human, that are walking you home. We welcome you all into our hearts and into this promise to walk beside you always. And today we welcome Nancy in a special way. So Sue, if you could pin Nancy and I to that screen there, my dear. And I will say a ceremony that we have said many times before. First, I will ask of our members, the people present, members and friends and associates and all of you to answer when I ask this question of you. Today we welcome Nancy into our community. We are so glad to have you here with us, and that you have chosen this community of fellow seekers to travel with you on your life journey. And to everyone present today, will you accept our gifts? Oh no, actually this is to you, Nancy, so sorry. So to you, Nancy, will you accept our gifts of fellowship, discovery, and service? Will you offer us your unique presence and gifts? Will you add your name to the long history of Unitarian Universalist women and men and Z's and they's who spread hope with our living faith? Will you engage with us as we seek to create a community and a world dedicated to love and justice? Miss
I
Nancy.
will. Thank you.
And to you, members of the congregation, and all of you who are here today with us, as members and friends, do you agree to welcome and to nurture and to encourage Nancy's spiritual growth?
We
Please
do.
unmute yourself. Ah, Laura.
Ew.
Yes.
Oh, look at the flower.
Laura, typically during this time, Laura, as chair of the membership committee, would give you a rose, Nancy, and give you a big hug along with me. So please receive that virtual fragrance and hug. And do you also, community, agree to welcome Nancy into this community to extend friendship and support to the best of your ability during times of joy and celebration, of struggle and sadness?
We do.
We do.
Well,
Thank you.
Welcome, dear Nancy.
You do.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. You are already such a part of us. Nancy's on the caring team with Laura and Allison. And who else am I missing, Laura?
Natalie.
Natalie, yes.
Okay.
And I think Judy Norkin's going to join us in not too distant future.
And this is such a dedicated team of people who spend their days considering how to bring you joy and comfort. So she is already a beloved member of that team. So I invited everyone who's becoming a member in these last few weeks to the porch to talk about membership and anything else. And they signed a book. And Sue, could you just put those signatures up now, please? So that everyone, an iteration of this book has been signed since 1809. They're over at the NHA. And if you ever get a chance to have a look, whoops. There we go. I just covered up the addresses and the phone numbers, but there they are. Paula Korn, Jane Barrett, and Carol Benchley and Nancy Adrian. I covered them up with an old Christmas card. But if you ever get a chance to go over to the NHA and see these signatures of people since 1809, and it'll open your heart and help you feel a blessed continuum of a community that has been going on for many, many years. Welcome, dear Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
It's the time in our service now where we do our gifts we bring. And I always ask, of course, for your generosity of mind and heart and participation and of resources, all part of the same fabric we weave together. And I will do so today. And given Mary Frances' beautiful message, I loved her. I loved your thoughts, Mary Frances, that grieving and grief are different and that we carry it and it invites us into new parts of ourselves. I just loved that so much. Thank you for opening my heart and mind in these ways. And so I ask you to participate in this community at this moment with your resources, but in all moments with your hearts and minds and goodness, and to be generous.
Nancy, that's something to hear about. You heard say stuff.
And that's up to you now, Sue. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button for a moment. So good morning, everyone. I wanted to direct you to our website, which has some important links that you can use. The holiday craft sale, you can click right here and it'll bring you right to the sale. If you want to receive and don't yet receive our newsletter, they come via email and you can sign up right here in the upper left corner. Kat mentioned earlier about the pledge for 2021. There is a sort of summary of why it's important. And down at the bottom here, there's a way to click and it brings you directly to a way to set up your pledge for the year. And if you need a little help, There's a step-by-step guide and a video that I made during service a couple weeks ago that sort of explains how to set it up for a year and what you can set it up weekly, monthly. So take advantage of those if you need them, and you can always email me for further assistance if required. And then to make your Sunday offering, you can click contribute up here at the top, or you can text to give. And when you do that, it brings you to this page. And you can choose Sunday offering, pledge 2020 or 21. And if it's just a gift of some other kind, you can choose that. You want to set it up recurring or one time only, and then be sure to fill in all of this information. And as you scroll down, put in your card number. And if you cover fees, that means that if you give $20, you'll end up giving $27, and that covers the credit card processing fees. And then you click give at the end. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Nigel.
Yeah, the offering today is one of my favorite seasonal carols. This is Lo, How a Rose Ere Blooming. It's a very old tune from the 15th century.
Such a beautiful choice for today, Nigel. Thank you. Thank you so much. Beautiful.
Thank you. It's always my joy to be here and to share the music. This is my happy place. Our final hymn today is number 131. Love Will Guide Us. And again, we'll stay muted for the singing of the hymns. And if you don't feel like singing along with this one, maybe it'll make you dance a little bit.
Thank you, choir. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Sue, for being here. I forgot to mention that Sue, Nigel, and I are crafting a Christmas Eve service together. That'll be at 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve. You'll be getting more info about it, but it's been such a joyful process to work with these two beautiful souls. Thank you so much. So, my dears, bless you. May whatever you're feeling have room within you to change your life and to change the lives around you. May there be space for one another always in your hearts, space for what you expect and what surprises you, space for your own need to be comforted and held and embraced. Amen. I want to remind you too that Mary Frances is hanging around for a question and answer time right after the chalice extinguishing and the postlude. So if you have any questions, you can, for her, you can put them in the chat or you can simply ask her. So please now join Gary in extinguishing the chalice, and the words are carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. And go ahead and unmute yourselves, please. Give me a sec.
Carry the flame.
Peace and love
Until we meet again.
Together again.
And postlude today is, as mentioned, a piece by my friend Andy Bullington, and this is called Fall River.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you so much. Whoops, sorry, I'm getting over to a different spot for the question and answer time. So thank you, Nigel and choir and Sue and all of you for being with us today. Thank you for your open hearts and minds. And thank you particularly, special thanks to you, Mary Frances. Thank you so much. And if you have questions for Mary Frances, you can put them in the chat or you can simply let them be known. And Sue, could you pin Mary Frances to the speaker piece so that...
I have a question.
Wonderful.
Yeah, okay, hi, thank you. I remember, I don't even remember what the source is, but I remember a book way back when that talked about the stages of grief. And I feel like that, and I'd love for you to speak about that. And I feel like that's got to be just a little bit too neat. I'm sure that it's more of a spiral than that. So I just wanted you to talk about that. I guess I envision it as a spiral, maybe that you go back and revisit. But if you could talk about that, if they even exist.
I'd love to. This is actually a favorite topic of mine. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969 published a book called On Death and Dying. And that book was a revelation at a time when a lot of people were getting to be heard who had not been heard before. Women, African Americans, the LGBT community. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is a psychiatrist, brought us the interviews with people who were terminally ill. She was a psychiatrist by training, worked in inpatient palliative care, and told us what she was told about people facing the end of life. And of course, there was a lot of grief in what they were experiencing. And as I said, I still honor her contribution today. When I said there's, confusion, she talked about that. There's anger. She talked about that. There's deep sadness and depression. She described all of those things, and then later also applied that to grief after the loss of a loved one. So not just grieving the loss of one's own life, but grieving the loss of a loved one. So it turns out 1969 was a very long time ago. and as luck would have it, scientists and psychologists have done some work since then. I say that in a joking sort of way, but I very strongly, we stand on the shoulders of the people before us, and she really brought us a description of the voice of someone we hadn't heard from much in our culture before. To some degree, we still don't. But it was a description of experience and not a prescription for how to grieve. And that is the confusion that I think many of us have been left with. So I will hear from people, I'm not done with grieving. I haven't been through the anger stage yet. And not everyone experiences anger. It's not that we can't describe it when it does happen in people who are grieving, but it isn't a requirement. There isn't some sort of end product that you won't get to if you don't do that. And I think one of the best descriptions I've heard for why this persists, the 5 stages of grief, why it persists, is that we come to this moment where the rug is just ripped out from under us. How our life is supposed to work completely changes. We're overwhelmed with unimaginable depth of feeling, and we would like a story of how we're going to get through it. We would like to hear there are these 5 things we'll go through, and then we will be done. We'll be restored. Unfortunately, just as you say, it's not quite that neat, Janet. And more commonly, we think about the process that people go through of oscillating between feeling the loss, restoring their life, just having everyday life experience too. Not all of the time we spend is spent grieving, even when we are faced with the loss of something very important. You will have moments right now during COVID where you're not actually engaged in thinking about the pandemic or thinking about the things you've lost. You have days you're just, brushing your teeth and pulling stuff out of the garden. So I think that it has, unfortunately, as a prescription, been used in a way that can be tragic for some people who feel they're not doing it right, that they haven't done it, as though it ends. And so some of the role of current bereavement researchers is to really communicate to you that we've learned a lot since her wonderful contribution.
Thank you so much.
In that same vein, Mary Frances, I know that there was a 6th stage added to this. David Kessler, about making meaning after death, and I wondered if you could just comment on that.
Sure. David Kessler. So I had the great fortune to hear Elizabeth Kubler-Ross speak before she died. A few years ago now. She actually retired to Arizona, and she had had a stroke at that point. She was a force of nature. David Kessler spent the last years of her life with her. He's a psychologist, psychiatrist, I can't remember, in his own right. And he talked a lot about making meaning. And I think it was really, much as I was talking about, a way of sort of bringing additional description to what she had talked about. And given that we like a story, because a story is easy to follow, I think he called it a sixth stage as a way to sort of add it to this mental map we already had. And many of our clinicians who write about grief, maybe many of the individuals who write stories about their own experience with grief, talk about making meaning as being an important part for them of how they navigated this difficult path. Someone else had a question. I
have
heard.
a question.
Joanne.
Joanne, I'd like to get a copy of your talk today because I'd like to send a copy to a friend who has just lost her husband, and I think you have just nailed it.
That is so thoughtful.
And actually, it does reflect a great deal the way I feel and my attitude toward death and so forth. So, can I give you? How can I get this to you? Can you get this to me?
So I think we may have to rely on your lovely pastor, Linda. That was fairly spontaneous. It turns out
it's recorded though, isn't
it? It is recorded. And so I believe that Linda will have access to that.
Oh, good.
Oh, I apologize. Sue will have access to that.
Transcribed then, is that right?
Absolutely.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you so much.
And
So if you could send that
if you'd like, Joanne, we can ask Elizabeth just to take the sermon section off the recording and send you just that piece so that it's easier for you to forward, because it's a big recording. It's hard to, so
Right.
I'll ask Elizabeth to do that, and I'll make it available to everybody. Well, Sue will. Sue, do you have anything to add to that, my friend?
Sue, I'd be very grateful if I could receive it as well. It's when we have a communion like this, I find I sometimes speak better, and all that wonderful community really inspired me this morning. So thank you.
Hi, Mary Frances. I agree with everything that's been said. It's really beautifully done. Based on your name, I have a funny feeling that perhaps you might have had a Catholic background. And it strikes me that the story that you're weaving is pretty close to the Christ story too. And I wonder if Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, probably not the Christ story for her, but it's a very similar human story of death and dealing with it and restoration. I grew up in South America, and I found the rituals in the Catholic Church. I've been Unitarian since I was 3 weeks old. So it's been a long time. But I find those rituals really helpful. And do you have rituals that you connect with this process that you're talking about also? Anything, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I understand exactly what you're saying. I was raised Catholic. I had very, very religious parents. I found Quakerism when I was a teenager. My best friend was Quaker, and I've participated on and off in that tradition for a very long time. And more recently in Buddhism. So the path is many and winding. There are lots of insights brought to us in lots of different traditions. And I think that, that story, as you described it, some of you will have known Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth, and that he also talks about these stories, and that this idea that you come to this unfathomable alien world and you have these sort of barriers you must overcome, and then you're able to return with increased gifts or wisdom. This is a story that I think fits as human beings. In many traditions, we have that understanding of sort of redemption. And I think that is the story that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was helping us to hang the information on, because it was easy to remember, and also comforting that there would be a way in that moment where you just feel lost and confused. And ritual is another way that we deal with that loss and confusion. Those rituals that we have, if you've been a part of a tradition, those rituals, as both my parents, we had memorials for them, we had funeral masses for them. Going through those motions, because sometimes you're very numb if you've recently had a loss, but going through those motions connects you to all the people before you who have had grief, and reminds you that they too have managed through it and somehow continue to have meaningful lives. And so I think the action of going through those rituals, or even just watching the people around you go through those rituals, helps us to learn, wow, this has really happened. I know that because I was at the funeral. Even if it seems unfathomable right now that it has happened, that this person could possibly be gone. I think those rituals serve lots of purposes. But I'll tell you one other very quick story, if that's all right, that it may not just be us as primates. So there are some wonderful research studies around the world where some of the other types of primates are observed in their own troops, and scientists make detailed descriptions of what happens. And one of the things I'm most touched by is this has happened a few times, but a just beautiful story of when an infant is born to a primate, to a chimpanzee in this case, sometimes that infant dies or is born already dead. And that mother often carries that infant for some period of time afterward. And although that may feel sort of strange to us, it isn't that the mother is confused. So the mother doesn't try to nurse the infant, and actually baby monkeys cling on. So actually carrying an infant is very unusual. It's clear that she knows what has happened and is somehow trying to process that experience. And although that is touching, eventually she relinquishes that corpse, and that varies widely in how long mothers carry that deceased infant, from days to months. So although there's all that individual variation in how we cope with it, the thing that I am most touched by is that in primate troops, there's this organization, there's a hierarchy. Who gets to groom who is a big deal. It matters, right? When the mother is going through this grieving process, she often stops grooming herself. And that's actually dangerous for primates. They need to have fleas removed and so forth. And anyone in the troop will groom the mother during that time, regardless of hierarchy, to make sure she stays supported and clean and healthy, while she can't do it for herself because she is doing something else. And so us as the troops surrounding that person, giving them rituals and bringing them casseroles and whatever it is that we do, may actually be very evolutionarily important to us, something we carry with us from very, very, very ancient times. So. Joanne, you have another thought, but you are on mute. But Christina is off mute, so I'm going to have Christina say something first, and then Joanne, you can add.
Thank you very much. That was an incredible story, because it completely fits. I'll just say one last thing, and that is that we lost Brad's father, but in Minnesota, and we weren't able to see him. And it feels, as you said, the Catholic ritual, it's there. There's a funeral. There's literally a body sitting in front of you. And this feels incredibly surreal.
Yes. And this is really, we know, and some of the research I'm engaged in right now is trying to understand, how do we deal with the second wave of those who have lost so many, and have done that in a context where they weren't able to be there for final visits, for end of life vigils, for rituals where communities come together and support each other in memorials, and trying to find out, okay, so given this is just true, given this is just how it is, what can we do to restore pieces of what's important? Things like your wonderful community has done, of ways of being together in ways that are safe, that bring forth the important pieces, that lighting a candle is still lighting a candle, even if you're each doing it in your own home. So trying to support these individuals who are going through it in a way they don't get to benefit from the usual methods that we use to navigate this difficult grieving process already. Joanne, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that elephants, and also they believe whales also suffer grief. But
Yes.
also, I just wanted to mention that I think one of the reasons that people have so much trouble with grief is the fact that we don't talk about it. We don't talk about death before we die. Children don't want, when their parents try to talk to them about what to do and all of that, they don't want to know. Children don't want to know. And so it's a big secret. And I think that when you actually face it, it's scarier because you haven't talked about it, and because you really don't know what to do because nobody has spoken about what to do. And so I think in the element of grief, there is also guilt.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And part of it being the fact that you didn't talk about it.
Yeah. I would just add, though, that, our young people are amazing. So I teach a psychology of death and loss class every year. 150 students sign up to take it between, the ages of 20 and 22. And they are transfixed. They hear the word death probably more in that semester than they've ever heard it before. They go home at Thanksgiving and they write living wills with their parents. They learn to do a suicide assessment. I mean, we do not shy away from the tough stuff. And they absolutely are hungry for knowing what is important and what other people have come before and done in these difficult scenarios. So I think it takes a lot of courage to talk about it. But when we can mount that courage, amazing things happen.
I'm thinking too, Mary Frances, about, sorry, Paul and Laura, did you want to go first before me? I see.
Well, I wanted to thank Linda, who did a year-long course on death, and a group of us met once a month for an entire year and went through a lot of the practices around death and dying and thinking about our own life and the legacy we wanted to leave. And it was a gift. If she ever has the chance to do it again, I hope that many of you will join her.
Thank you, Laura. I was thinking about that class too, and we did living wills. And I was also thinking about what Christina raised about rituals. Grew up Catholic, and I'm just a very I love ritual. And Gary's brother died, I don't know how, maybe 6 months ago now. And that lack of having of course, as a minister, I hold these containers, and it was so hard for, especially Gary. So what struck me as you were talking, Mary Frances, is developing something else. The containers we usually lean into we can't lean into them. But so my daughter and her partner live on island for a time now. And so we went to the beach, and each person had a poem, and we stood 6 feet apart and we read this poem, and then each person brought something to throw into the ocean and say something about Rick as they did. And then we built a cairn of rocks on the beach, and Gary drummed, and I thought, I was so moved to feel that though that container was very unscripted and very new, it had the same kind of capacity to do what you said so beautifully, connect us to the ritual and understanding of all the people who have grieved and died and gone before us, and to lean into that human embrace. I was surprised by the strength it had even though it wasn't in a church and there were no, hymns played and such. It was quite powerful.
I am very struck by, grief often takes us unaware. No one expects to be angry, and yet there you are, and you're furious, or just irritable even. I think what we have to learn is to allow ourselves to actually find out what grief is like. And sometimes I think making those memorials is about finding out what's actually important about the ritual. And while rituals have the ability to sort of carry us forward when we can't focus on anything, we can't figure out what's important at that moment, it does also have the opportunity for us to say, okay, so, what's been going on since, 500 BC? What do we want to keep? And what do we not want to keep because it's not safe right now, or it doesn't work right now, or what parts do we need to keep? And then those become the meaningful parts for us. They reflect the feeling that we have in this death, in this moment, in this time, in the context of a lot of history. I have several who have had to have weddings with just themselves and an officiant and a witness. And it's a similar process of, okay, well, we're not going to not get married. And so what do we need to do to make this a pause in the moment of regular life and a reflection of this bringing together of two people and their community? What is it that would reflect that, while the nature of us being in a pandemic is also a part of that wedding?
It's interesting you say weddings, and I've had bunches of them during COVID with just the couple and myself, and I have been so moved to find that the same sacredness and the same kind of holiness of, making that kind of commitment to oneself and the world in some ways, it shows up. So it's been a beautiful lesson for me that I thought so much else had to be present at the same time, but it turns out we can recraft this, because we're present still. That's the ingredient,
I'm, my Catholic heritage pokes up its head and says, that Jesus said to his disciples, where two or more of you are together, I am there. He didn't say it had to be in a temple, didn't have to be incense, there was no prayers required, but just being there. And he didn't say that it couldn't happen on Zoom. He was agnostic as to whether it was on Zoom or not. It's the being together that brings that feeling, that sacredness together. In my humble opinion, I'm not a pastor.
You are a pastor. You are, we all minister. And this is a ministry, Mary Frances. We are moved by your ministry today. I'm eating something that Avi Shitrit just dropped on the porch, talking about joyful for Hanukkah. Talk about. So I think you have a beautiful ministry, and you have blessed us beyond. My goodness.
And I feel that way too. I also don't want to take up too much of your time. I realize you all have other Sunday things to do.
Yeah, the Sunday thing to do today is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it's sunny out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're going to do. Thank you very much, Mary Frances. This was beautifully done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mary Frances, we go into breakout rooms now. There's no expectation that you join us or if anyone else joins us, just however wish to people, if they wish to join. Just a time to chat a little more quietly with